I noticed this kind of trend in the supply chain, really thinking about this from like a macro perspective. And then I didn't see anyone in Japan that was really actively tackling this problem. So I kind of thought it was a big market opportunity.
The unique insight from my first experience was, what are some ways to really accelerate the growth of your company? And venture capital is one way to rapidly scale your company. But in my case, one way alternative to venture capital is having the right team, building a network when you don't need it. There's networking versus selling. And when you're selling, let's say you want the other person to take a specific action, you might come off as desperate. But when you're networking, it's more about the other person.
So you really need to build a reputation, and there's really no shortcut to that. It just takes a lot of time. So you have to, again, adjust your mindset and strategy around taking more time.
For me, if you want to be successful in a specific region in Japan, you really need to have a local partner in that region.
Thanks everyone for joining. Welcome to our panel discussion on how to run your startup and survive and thrive in Japan and East Asia. So tonight we are diving deep into the realities of entrepreneurship in this region and its opportunities, unique challenges, and how foreign funders can successfully navigate them. So in short, we are going to talk about how to make it in Japan and as a foreigner, of course. So Japan and East Asia offer a great potential for foreign funded startups, but it's challenging at the same time. So understanding the local market, building the right network, and scaling effectively requires strategy and insights, which becoming a part of the support system and communities is definitely useful for in this region. So that's why we have gathered an outstanding panel of experienced entrepreneurs and mentors and startup ecosystem supporters who have built scaled businesses in Japan successfully. So in other words, who made it in Japan, so to speak. So they will be share their lessons, strategies, and experiences to help you not only survive but thrive in Japan. All right. Before we begin, I wanted to give a big thank you to the Venture Café Global Gathering team for organizing this event. So my name is Erdinc, Ekinci, an entrepreneur who supports entrepreneurs with my advocacy and ecosystem building efforts to nurture startups, investors, and everyone who wants to support startups. I'm the managing director of Panelists Japan, Korea, Taiwan chapters, which helps early-stage founders to turn ideas into fundable, funding-ready, and scalable startup companies with its accelerator programs in 200 cities, 100 countries, powered by the largest mentor pool in the world, 35,000 mentors, resulted in 8,000 startup companies. Tyson is a proud mentor of us and one of the first early believers of us. I'm an active entrepreneur as well, co-founder and CEO of the Open for Co. We have launched a Co-Capital Co. to back Asian founders who have global ambitions from the day one to boost their startup traction as a VC. I have witnessed many challenges in Japan. So each of our panels today has built thriving businesses in Japan as a foreign entrepreneurs. That's why we're here. So Tyson here. Tyson is a serial entrepreneur who bootstrapped OneCoin English, 40 plus full-timers, 150 part-timers, Japan Learning for Foreigners, and SmartStart Japan recently. He runs Scaling Japan podcast, sharing business growth insights from the ecosystem. And he was one of the earliest believer and very good ecosystem support. You can reach out to him as well. He can connect. And Alexander is the CEO and founder of 3D-PC, a Yokohama-based company builds a supply chain market for hard-to-make parts for industrial purpose. And before launching the 3D-PC in 2016, he worked in Shenzhen manufacturing sector. His company built a platform, Taiga, digitalized the supply chain data and works mostly with the industrial and military clients. And with experience in building the business in Japan almost a decade, he brings the deep expertise in industrial tech. Serkan Toso, my fellow Turkish friend, merhaba minasan, is the co-founder of byFood, connecting travelers to authentic Japanese food experiences. Moving to Japan in 2015 for master's degree in e-business, he launched Tokyo byFood in 2018, integrating social impact by donating meals per booking. So in 2019, he expanded it nationwide as byFood, bridges Japan's food and culture and global travelers, breaking language barriers while giving back. So as you can see, each of them has a unique story of overcoming obstacles and building successful companies in Japan's startup ecosystem, which is very challenging. Let's dive into the discussion. Okay, so I'd like to ask every one of you right here. As the first question is, we would like to little bit more know you more, your story, especially how you start it. Let's start with Tyson. So, how did you get into the entrepreneurship, Tyson? And what your company does also?
So I would say that entrepreneurship found me in that I worked at a corporation for 3 years. And after I left, I went on vacation for 5 weeks. I came back to Japan. And then one of the people who worked under me, who I was supposed to let go, but I didn't let go. He mentioned that these 2 serial Japanese entrepreneurs were looking for a third co-founder to make an English language school chain that would go national. And so he told them that I was the right guy for them. And that was just a match made in heaven.
Yeah, I got started in entrepreneurship because I couldn't get a job. So I think it was like 2007, 2008, and I graduated university or something like that. And then I was applying for jobs that I wanted and just summarily rejected. So I was like, okay, what do I do now? So I went to Italy, and I like wine or drinking wine. And then I thought, I know a lot of the farmers. Why don't I start a wine trading business, right? You can buy from the farms super cheap and then sell to America for a lot more. And I sort of got my first taste of business and the complexity around that, and considering things like, shipping, distribution, taxes, etc. And I realized how hard it is. And I ended up drinking half my inventory. So that not a sustainable business model, if you're curious. And then I went to, so that failed, but I went to China because I still thought I was really cool. So I basically bought a one-way ticket to China and thought I could make a business there. And then I had the good fortune of meeting a mentor there who taught me a lot about business in general. And we made a pretty successful business there. But it's a hard place to live. So I had this idea around supply chain, and I didn't really see any large Japanese companies taking it seriously. So I thought, okay, I should move to Japan and start this business. And that was in 2016. So I think I've been a lifelong entrepreneur, but not by choice.
Since university time, I always wanted to start my own business and create social impact with my own business. So after graduation from my master's degree in Niigata Prefecture, I came to Tokyo. It was quite challenging for me to dine in restaurants in Tokyo, like reserving restaurants by phone in Japanese. When you are in the restaurant menu, everything is in Japanese. So I started a little bit digging this, and I saw that actually 75% of the travelers coming to Japan come because they want to eat Japanese food. But on the other hand, we have a huge language barrier. So I saw the business opportunity, and I started this as a side job while I was working for another company. And at the end, I quit and I started my own business.
That's great. So I'm really curious, why Japan? So my next question going to be about why Japan. So, but I'd like to a little bit ask per person, because I know all of you guys. So Tyson, as a foreign entrepreneur, what were the biggest obstacles when you faced in Japan, and why Japan now, after all, and how did you navigate these challenges also?
My case, or I would say, based on a lot of the founders that I've mentored and advised, I'll say probably one of the biggest challenges is really finding the right co-founder. In my case, I just got lucky where I had a corporate background, I was an expert in one area, and 2 serial entrepreneurs, I was the missing link. And so they came and found me. And let's say, I guess their advice I would give to some people, sometimes it's really hard to find the right co-founder. But in our case, because one co-founder was an expert at marketing, and just to clarify, our business was OneCoin English, providing low-cost English lessons. And so one partner was the marketing expert, bringing in the customers. One partner was a franchise consultant. How do we negotiate rent? How do we build locations for a cheap price? How do we train the Japanese staff? He was an expert at that. And my job was, how can we hire, train, manage 500,000 foreigners? And so we each solved one of the missing links. So I guess the advice there is, if you're really good at one area, maybe a person who's a really good founder might actually come find you. rather than starting from zero.
Alexander, so you built a business in Japan after working in China, right? So what inspires you to choose Japan first? And what was the difference, between two startup ecosystem in China and versus Japan?
Yeah, China's very dynamic. So this is, I guess, those two questions are kind of they blend into each other. China's is very young in a sense. It's trying to figure out what it's going to be. I think Japan is very mature and maybe even ossified a little bit over the last decade. But I think when I noticed this kind of trend in the supply chain, and my background is economics, so I was really thinking about this from a macro perspective. And then I didn't see anyone in Japan that was really actively tackling this problem. So I kind of thought it was a big market opportunity. And I think that Japan is a much easier place to live, so I think that also helps. Yeah, that equation. Yeah, so I think that's why Japan.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, let's go to Serkan. So byFood connects the food lovers with Japanese culinary experiences. So how did you gain the trust in the market as a foreigner? They value the tradition and authenticity and so on, but you're a foreigner. How did you do that?
As a foreigner, it is very challenging. So in the beginning, I kept the scope small. I started from Tokyo and only experiences, and I only work with hosts that speak English. So this is something I can do myself. So that time I was alone, just started a WordPress website and just knocking this people doors, and I had around 100 experiences until this time. But the goal for my business was to create Japan's travel platform, including restaurant reservations as well. But on the restaurant side, for a foreigner, impossible to do it yourself. So you will talk to the restaurant, they will tell you, bring a Japanese person, I don't want to talk to a foreigner. This is the fact. So as the next step, actually, I merged my business with another company called Tablecross. They were doing restaurant reservations for Japanese people. In my business, I am donating 10 meals to children in developing countries for every guest we have. And this Tablecross app was also donating 1 meal per one reservation. So I have food experiences, they have restaurant reservations. So together we merged these businesses and started byFood. And through their power and network, we entered restaurant industry. Otherwise, it's very difficult for a foreigner to do that. So that's why sometimes you really need a Japanese partner depending on your business.
Highly recommended, by the way, byFood. What is the byfood.com? Not JP, right?
No, .com. Yeah.
English content, you can discover all the goodies in culinary Japanese food easily with this platform. Okay, I'm very curious about the initial part, because I'm trying to specialize myself like a pre-seed, because it's one of the hardest in actually both in for startups or for a venture capital to it requires a lot of specification and sophistication. So I'm really curious about the beginning, and I have a very tough question. So because all of you bootstrap a bit, but one of you bootstrap completely. So I'm really curious about the comparative analysis here. I think it could be also valuable for the audience, I believe. So many startups begins with limited resources and bootstrap. But I'm also Bootstrap's founder with UdiChain. Some people bootstrap, some people will get funding, external funding from venture capital. Okay, it's not a religion or to choosing one or another, right? So it's a strategic choice. But I'm really curious. So Tyson, so you have successfully bootstrapped not only one, but 3 companies in Japan. And recently you started another one, right? So what was the biggest secret behind multiple businesses without external funding?
So one I think unique insight that I have is, so I've bootstrapped 4 companies, and all of them do 6 figures plus. And I'll say the unique insight from my first experience was, I think, what are some ways to really accelerate the growth of your company? And venture capital is one way to rapidly scale your company. But in my case, I think one way alternative to venture capital is having the right team. So I think I mentioned in my case, having 3 experts who are very good at what they do. They don't have to worry about their co-founder. I take care of my stuff, we go quick. And so that was a good experience, being the right team, the right service, at the right time. And in terms of timing, Japan had just increased the consumption tax from 4 to 8%. So people were looking for a cheaper alternative. And so I think by having the combination of those three factors, we were able to scale very, very, very quickly, like triple, double, which is the venture capital, let's say, metrics of scaling, but purely through bootstrapping. But the other one, in terms of how to do a lot with limited resources, one thing that when I do my advisory for startup founders is the word no. So sometimes you'll ask like an expert or someone a question, and they'll say it's not possible. And it's not ending the conversation there. So like how? And if I had to give one example, in my case, I did work with 2 serial entrepreneurs, and I was the newbie. And I think like in month 4, they're like, we're gonna need you to hire hundreds of teachers, and we aren't giving you a budget. And coming from corporate background, where they spend like, I can't reveal the number, but they spend a lot of money. You could hire multiple people with that money. And like hiring hundreds of people without any budget, I was like, this is impossible, this can't be done. And my co-founder, who had found previous multi-million-dollar businesses, he says, get it done. Ultimately, I did find a way. We hired over 1,000 teachers, and I've never paid for a job board ad. But my preconceived notion was it was impossible, but actually that no was my no, not the real no. There was a way to figure it out. So sometimes how to do a lot with limited resources is not to be, I guess, forced into a corner with the word no. Find the way. And that's what makes, I would say, good founders, especially for early stage.
I think it forces you to be more creative, right? When you like constrain yourself with resources and things. So it's pretty interesting. It forces you to be more innovative in this business model as well. It's pretty interesting.
And also my corporate experience, I was in charge of 150 full-timers. I did an employee survey. How much do you like our company? Satisfaction, it was a 2.2 out of 5. And like I went to my boss, like, hey, we got to change this. I have some ideas, like doing events. Can I get a budget? He said no. So ultimately, my management team and myself, they put in their own money. We put in our own money to do like events for staff and just find unique ways. And I'll say after 1 year, I increased it to a 3.7 out of 5. And without increasing salary, which has probably been what it would have taken it to like maybe 4.2. But I've just been forced my whole life into not having any money. So that's why I would say one caveat is, it's also my biggest weakness, is when people say like, oh, you should rent venture capital, I'm like, we don't need that much money. We're just going to waste money. So I'll say that's kind of my weakness. Strength is basically being a cockroach. But at the same time, sometimes it's not suited for hyper growth.
Thanks, Tyson. So I'm also curious, Alexander, because Alexander, you 3D printing corporation. Your field is operates in a more advanced in manufacturing space, which is often requires significant capital intensive, right? So how did you manage to fund in an early stage? Actually, you also bootstrap initially, then raise capital, right?
I think I basically thought when I came to Japan, I would build the business in 3 phases. So I thought I could make like a system integration business profitable, and I did that from the first 3 years. We were making money, and then I wanted to make a kind of higher margin business on top of that. So then I needed to build an engineering team to do that. So that was kind of phase 2, and then we took an initial round of funding to do that and to start some of the work on the factory. So we used money that we were generating plus VC money to build out a factory, and then that's kind of like second phase. And then you kind of get more margins from that. You start to make the business a little bit more robust too. So like sort of avoiding competition and making your own position in the market. And then on the third phase, it was really the platform. It's just sort of a money pit to build a marketplace, right? You're trying to build supply and demand sides. You're trying to build software. And then so we took more money from VC to fund that. And then that's sort of where we're at now. We launched the platform and growing revenue and clients on that. But I think you just need to have that long-term vision, come up with a very simple strategy, generate as much cash flow as you can, especially early. There's nothing wrong with that. And then try to hold on to as much control and equity as possible. If you do decide to go down the VC path, don't sell yourself short and don't let someone else control your destiny.
Serkan, so byFood operates in a platform-based model, which requires a sort of marketplace adoption rate. So, AKA chicken and egg problem, the famous chicken and egg problem in the marketplace, which is so hard actually. So, what was your solution to because you're gonna need, I guess, some runway to do so, but you bootstrap actually. What was your story there?
I mean, I started this business with 500,000 yen in my bank account. So I just started a WordPress website, and on the side, I was doing some consulting businesses to survive myself. And in the beginning, I also had like unpaid interns helping me to grow the business. But over time, we started increasing the number of hosts in the platform. So that part is like he mentioned chicken and egg problem, so you have to have enough supply to bring demand, also vice versa. So we focus on the supply part. In our business, there are like really huge players, Viator, Get Your Guide, Kuluk. These companies have actually more than $500 million investment companies. But in Japan, they usually don't have offices, or in those companies, these suppliers needs to do everything by themselves. If they have any problem, they just need to talk to customer support and waiting, etc. So we focus on that part. We provided really direct support to suppliers. For example, their English is not enough to create appealing English content on the platform. So our native writers help them to create the content. Or also the platform, because we are only focusing on food, we develop the functions solving their platforms, because these global platforms, they do everything, so they don't have specialized functions for these people needs. So we focus on that part and we grow the supply. Right now there are 450 companies selling their food experiences in our platform.
No, I guess it works. Okay, so I think it's most startups in the kind of in the very beginning stage, the founder stage, they are in the idea maze. They are always in the problem and solution iteration rapidly. So and finally find a big market and then good product market fit, so you could scale up, right? So there is no playbook in that actually. You just need to go after it, and then those are great stories that prove to this idea, I believe. So it's amazing to know, actually. It's really great stories. I'm going to, again, focus on a bit Japan challenges, because I'm struggling in Japan, honestly. I mean, we try, we grow somehow, but we didn't, we couldn't just hit it, So I'm curious from your experiences and insights. So how did you navigate in Japan? So for first, Tyson, so what was the cultural and business practices that foreign entrepreneurs often overlook when entering or starting in Japan, and based on your experiences?
For me, I would say that probably, there's more for those who are in Japan, living in Japan, but I would say building a network when you don't need it. And what I mean by that is when you have to, let's say there's networking versus selling. And when you're selling, let's say you want the other person to take a specific action, you might come off as desperate. But when you're networking, more about the other person. Of course, selling it is about the other person. But so I find, in my case, when, let's say, my wife's sister had a terminal illness, she said, I want to go back home to Hokkaido. And I just said, okay, I'll go. And so I actually gave up, let's say, my director position. I left the company I founded after 8 years to support my wife. I launched an advisory business. I think my first month's salary was 400,000 yen, which is pretty good start, 400,000 the first month. And I think by month 3, I was making 700,000 yen a month. And the reason for that was, while I was working at my other company, I went to a lot of networking events. I helped a lot of people. And so when it came time for me to need something to, I guess you'd say, take, a lot of people gave back to me. So that would be one of the tips. Let's say, it's easier to ask for things after you've given. But if you're just trying to take, you're starting from a harder point.
That resonated with me a lot, honestly. We couldn't find a collaborative environment, so we built one. So why not we also didn't have a community, so we could build a community first. So this is how we wanted to learn. And we also couldn't get an accelerator, so why not we brought an accelerator? Because we have expertise enough and things like that. And lastly, we couldn't get funding, so why not launch our own VC? So why not? I guess it works.
And so one common question I get, please introduce me to an investor. I get that probably every week. And one tip is find the company that, or let's say build a network, find the company that the investor you want has already invested in, give them a client, and then ask them to introduce you to an investor. So that's one way of giving, then taking, rather than just like introduce me to an investor. It's like, I don't even know you.
Give them first until you build a good relationship. I guess one of the best ways is build something common that you could get to work together with them, rather than just getting acquaintances. So you collaborate and you build a relationship, then you become friend, and would you be invested in my company? Later on you can ask, right? Anyways, let's move forward. I would like to also ask Alexander that what specific challenges you face especially you're selling in heavy industrial solutions actually as a foreigner in Japan. So how did you adapt this and how did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of challenges. Every business has challenges. I think the unique thing I had to adjust to was that the Japanese large companies and government work on a kind of different clock speed from a startup, right? The frequencies are just so different. Startups are all about growth mindset and like, how are we going to push this out faster and go through that iterative loop faster? And you just have to understand that an employee in a large corporate, especially in Japan, is not motivated by growth. They have a very different mindset. I think they're sort of motivated by like certainty and sort of doing what they need to do without taking any risks to do that. So you have to just realize that there's these huge mismatches in timings. And then you have to adjust your strategy around that, recognizing that. So I think that has been one of the biggest challenges. I think trust is another big one, where people don't really trust ideas and other people in Japan. In some ways it's like super high trust, in some ways it's super low trust society. And I think you have to come at it from that you're not going to just come in with a nice sales pitch and say like, hey, trust me, bro, buy this machine. That just won't happen. And so you really need to build a reputation, and there's really no shortcut to that. It just takes a lot of time. So you have to, again, adjust your mindset and strategy around taking more time. Yeah.
All right. How about Serkan? So, in your case, food, deeply tied to the Japanese culture, but at the same time, it's fully English content you guys creating, right? Fully English. So how did you ensure that byFood remained authentic while also being a scalable platform at the same time?
Authenticity is our differentiation point, so it is very important. We really care about that. We have a lot of quality check before we onboard any partner. So if they can pass those criteria, we can onboard them. But we are doing business all around Japan, and we cannot check every experience restaurant one by one. So we have our ambassador network. So whenever we have new partner requests, we send our partners to those experiences. They experience them for free in exchange of giving us their opinion how the experience was. So using this ambassador network and quality check criteria, we can ensure the authenticity. In addition to our partner experiences, we also come up with our own ideas, and we find partners who can do those experiences. For example, I don't know, there are so many sushi making classes in Japan, but for example, in our case, we can create the sushi making class in a Michelin star restaurant with the chef. So those kind of unique things, we can create our network. So that's also ensure authenticity.
So I have a game proposal, which is a rapid fire game, and you limited only 15 to 20 second answers, right? Ready? Let's get started. So the first question going to be the current, what's next for you? Very quick. And next on going to be, what would you do differently if you start over? Challenging. Challenge accepted? Yeah. Tyson, 15 seconds.
So what I'm doing now is, if anyone wants to set up a company in Japan, we set up company, visa, bank account, tax registration, labor registration, all the boring stuff. And if I had to start all over again, they found me, so I guess I'll just be awesome in my corporate gig, be so awesome that people come and find the expert.
What's next for you, for your company and your goals? And next is, what would you do differently if you start over again? 50 seconds each.
Next is probably the Series A. I think we're going to raise a large round like that and go more global. If I could do something differently, I think one of the big lessons I've learned is really just to focus on fewer things, but do them super intensely. It's much easier to just be super intense than it is to try to spread yourself out and do a lot of stuff in a mediocre way.
For us, we are doing right now a Series B round and expanding globally outside of Japan. The things we will do differently is during COVID, there was no travelers coming to Japan, so we started an e-commerce marketplace in addition to experiences and restaurants, but that didn't go well at all, so probably we wouldn't do that. Instead of that, we would focus on improving the content while we have time.
Okay, guys, would like to ask you very final words that about the best way aspiring founders to as a support in Japan. What is your final advice? Tyson, how new aspiring founders can get support, what they can do as final your goals?
So if you are creating a startup, maybe Founder Institute as one possible place to start. So I think there's two quick paths. One is maybe become an expert in an industry, then find another person who can do sales, and then rock is my path.
I mean, I don't know if it's Japan specific, but you should be extremely tenacious. And especially, I guess especially in Japan, it's going to take you 2 or 3 times as long as it would in America. So if you actually do want to start a business in Japan, be prepared to take a lot of punches and just take a lot of time to do it and understand that trade-off.
For me, if you want to be successful in a specific region in Japan, you really need to have a local partner in that region. For example, we wanted to get stronger in Kanagawa Prefecture. We started working with the Yokohama Bank, and they opened all the doors to us. So you really need that kind of strong partner in the region that you want to increase your business.
Wow, thank you so much, guys. Like, what a discussion, right? So a huge thank you for all the panelists and sharing the valuable insights, experience, and the hard-learned lessons.